Hey everybody, today I'm out here near Phoenix, Arizona, and we're taking a look at the 2020 Ford Super Duty line of trucks. The F-250, F-350, and of course the F-450. For 2020, a lot of things have remained the same in the Super Duty lineup. So we have essentially the same sheet metal going on, the same bed, the same cab, and interestingly enough, the same frames under all of that as well. But we see some really big changes under the hood, some tweaking of option packages, and some refinement to Ford's active towing systems. The big change, of course, for 2020 is under the hood, where we find the biggest and most powerful gasoline V8 available in the 3/4 ton and 1 ton segment. And of course, we get the absolutely insane amount of torque out of the redesigned 6.7 liter turbo diesel, 1,050 pound-feet of torque in that engine. And unlike the Ram pickup truck line, you will get 1,050 pound-feet of torque even in the F-250, what we're looking at right here, rather than derating it for the 3/4 ton truck. Up front, you can see that we get a new grille and headlamps, but things are overall very similar in terms of style to the 2019 model year. One thing that has changed is the cooling capacity of the 250 and 350, and of course the 450 as well, in order to support that absolutely massive amount of torque that we get out of the available diesel engine. Again, we are driving the one with the gasoline engine right here. We're also driving the model with the full LED headlamps, which is a really nice touch. I wish that all trims got these particular headlamps. The front end design changes a little bit based on the trim level that you get. This particular model is a King Ranch trim, but regardless of the trim level you get, the front end is going to be a little bit less controversial than what we see in the Chevy Silverado lineup. Moving to the rear, we find restyled tail lamps. We have amber turn signals, which is definitely my preference. That's really a nice touch back here, I think. We also have blind spot monitoring that's integrated into the tail lamp module, not into the bumper. That means we still get a metal bumper down below. We have the enormous platinum logo right there in the middle of this tailgate, but the tailgate itself is relatively similar to the outgoing model. It is damped, but it is still a little bit heavier than some of the lightweight tailgates we see out there. Of course, the aluminum construction that we see in the Super Duty really helps out the overall weight of items like the tailgate and of course the doors as well. Even though we have a metal bumper, we do have well-integrated parking sensors on the metal side and in this plastic insert right here as well. As we see in most 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, we have this really hefty receiver right here. This is not a 2-inch receiver, it's a 2.5-inch receiver. It's the next step up. We have a 7-pin and a 4-pin wiring harness connector, and this is the lock for the tailgate. This particular model is an F-450, not an F-350. Ford splits their max payload and max tow vehicles into two separate models, the 350 and the 450. That's perhaps the best way to think of the Super Duty lineup. So the direct competition to the F-450 is going to be something like a Ram 3500 or a Chevy Silverado 3500 or a GMC Sierra 3500. Those manufacturers do not split this particular trim level off. There's obviously overlap between the F-350 and F-450, but theoretically, if you want the max tow ability, that's going to be in the 450. If you want the max payload, that's going to be in the 350. Now let's talk about the numbers, because that's of course the entire reason for buying a Super Duty in the first place, is the overall capability. If we're talking about maximum towing, again, 37,000 pounds in the F-450, but the F-350 is no slouch either. That comes in at 35,750, and if you get the F-250, that comes in still at a whopping 22,800 pounds. So if you're looking to replace your perhaps 10 or 20-year-old F-350 or F-450, you may not need to step up into a modern F-350. An F-250 might do just fine for you, because the towing wars have meant that we have absolutely insane numbers all the way across the board. And of course, towing is nothing without appropriate payload figures, and those are pretty insane as well. The F-250 gasoline will give you a total of 4,260 pounds of payload. The diesel drops that down to 3,940. But if you want the most payload, that will be in the F-350 dual rear wheel. That will give you 7,850 pounds of payload. That is an absolutely insane number. Obviously, that's going to be with the dualies and with the gasoline engine under the hood. As always, the important thing to remember about payload and towing is that the options and features that you add to your truck, as well as the things that you put in the bed, will affect the amount of weight that you can tow. So for instance, this King Ranch F-450 tops out at about 30,000 pounds because of the options and the features and the cab configuration that we have on that particular model. Now, why is it that Ford has really bumped up the maximum towing ability all the way across the board? Part of it is because if you were to get some of these upper end trims of vehicles, it's going to give you that extra cushion in terms of towing ability. Definitely keep that in mind. So across the board, the Super Duty lineup should be towing more than comparably equipped Silverados, Sierras, or of course the Ram 2500 and 3500. At this point in the video, we would normally start talking about what's going on under the hood, what the interior looks like, etc. But we're going to do things a little bit differently in this video, because I'm going to be driving this back to the San Francisco Bay Area from Phoenix. It's going to be about 800 miles because I'm going to be stopping in Los Angeles to pick up a Honda ATV. It's a quad-style single-person ATV. We're going to put that in the bed, and then we're going to continue on for another about 360 miles on home. And over this trip, we'll be talking about how the cabin suits me, how the engine performs, etc. Again, we are driving the new 7.3-liter V8 engine under the hood, so that's the one that we'll be focusing on in this video. I also will have a different video on the new Tremor package. That's the off-road package that we find on the F250 and F350. Sadly, not on the F450, unfortunately. And because there are so many different ways you can configure your F250, F350, and F450, and of course the way that the 350 and 450 really compete with the competition, we're going to be doing comparisons in a separate video. Since the engines are the big deal for 2020, let's talk about them up front. The first thing you should know is that the 6.2-liter gasoline V8 engine is still available. You'll find that in the base model and in the model with the highest payload ability, over 7,800 pounds of payload if you properly equip your model with the 6.2-liter V8. The model that we're driving here is, of course, the 7.3-liter V8, the most powerful engine in this segment. 430 horsepower is what this engine cranks out, and 475 pound-feet of torque. Now you might be wondering, why is a 7.3-liter engine that is brand new only making 430 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque? Shouldn't it be more? Well, this engine is all about delivering a very linear power and torque curve. So yes, Ford could have created an engine that would produce more horsepower, but that would not have led to better towing ability. And this gas engine is one of the best gas engines in this segment as far as towing goes. The 6.7-liter Power Stroke diesel is going to be the most popular engine in the Super Duty lineup. That gives you 475 horsepower and a whopping 1,050 pound-feet of torque, routed through essentially the same 10-speed automatic transmission that we find here. Now, there's been a lot of talk out there about whether this is the same transmission that we find under the hood of the GMC Sierra and Chevy Silverado. The answer is no, but there obviously is a relationship between the two. The reason for that is Ford and General Motors co-developed the basic 10-speed automatic transmission that we find under the hood of the F-150 and the Silverado 1500. Interestingly enough, that's basically the same transmission that we also see under the hood of the Mustang and the Camaro. Now, both General Motors and Ford knew that they needed a heavy-duty transmission for their heavy-duty trucks, the 2500, 3500, 250, 350, etc. So they independently took that same basic 10-speed automatic transmission and then strengthened it for use in their heavy-duty trucks. General Motors did theirs, Ford redesigned theirs. What does this new 10-speed automatic get you that we don't see in the older Super Duty trucks, or interestingly enough in the Ram pickup line? Well, we get a more aggressive first gear and we get a taller final gear. The reason I'm talking so much about the transmission is because it truly is the key to understanding how the Super Duty lineup can tow up to 37,000 pounds when properly equipped. The when properly equipped is important to keep in mind. The model that we're driving right here is not the top-end towing model for the F250. Most of the trucks that you're going to find out there on the dealer lot are not going to be the max tow capacity for the Super Duty lineup either. In fact, Ford tells us that about 0.1% of all 250, 350, or 450 models are the absolute max tow versions. The reason for that, of course, is that adding options, adding gadgets, gizmos, four-wheel drive, etc., all of that will alter your effective payload and towing ability in any pickup truck out there. So the truck that will tow 37,000 pounds is a very specific trim level. We're now about 2 hours into the overall drive, and one thing I can say right up front is that Ford's top-end seat design is the most comfortable in this segment, thanks largely to its anti-fatigue seat massage function. Now, this is not an aggressive sort of muscle-kneading massage like we find in some European luxury sedans. Ford was instead interested in reducing fatigue and improving blood circulation on longer road trips, and that's definitely important in some of the top-end trims of F250 or 350. For folks that are towing fifth wheels or other travel trailers, this is going to be an awful lot more comfortable on those cross-country journeys. One of the key things that I like about this seat is that if you turn on the seat massage, it doesn't turn off until you're ready for it to turn off. And most of the massaging seats that we see in the luxury segment will stay active for about 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then they will automatically turn off. But this seat cushion does not do that. And you can enable the massage on the seat back or the seat bottom independently of one another. And we also have that seat bottom massage, which is what's improving the circulation on your legs. About 2 months ago, I spent a good 8 hours or so driving a Ram Power Wagon around Texas. And one thing you'll really notice about Ram's 3/4 ton and 1 ton truck is that the seat design and, in fact, the cab and body of the vehicle are the same as the last generation Ram truck. It's not a complete redesign for 2019 and 2020. 6 hours into the road trip, I have gone through the Los Angeles metro area, and we're now just north of Santa Barbara. I picked up a Honda ATV. It's a cute, adorable, tiny one. It only weighs about 500 pounds. But I have to say that I do notice a definite difference in the overall ride quality out here on the open highway once we've added that weight in the rear. That is something to keep in mind. If you're looking for a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck with the best ride in this segment, that's going to be the Ram pickup truck line with the available optional air suspensions. The heavy-duty Rams don't use the same kind of air suspension that we find in the light-duty Ram. It's an entirely different design. We have leaf springs in the back, and then we have airbags that are more similar to what we see in some of GM's large SUVs or, of course, commercial vehicles out there. In something like the Ram 3500, that allows them to still use leaf springs in the back, but it allows the leaf springs to be softer, so that way more of the weight is supported by the airbag that allows it to adjust and give you a better ride out on the road. Now, in terms of overall steering feel, I have to say that if you're going to be driving your vehicle out on winding mountain roads, you're probably not going to want a big pickup truck like this, but I have to say that the new GMC Sierra and Chevy Silverado heavy duties do have a slightly better feel overall than we find here in the Ford Super Duty. With about 530 miles under our belt so far, I can safely say that if you get this 7.3 liter V8, you should expect 14 to 15 miles per gallon out on the highway, not towing anything. That is completely unladen, no trailer in the back as well. Obviously, if you're going to be towing something, that fuel economy is really going to drop down. In the test vehicle that we were able to use out in Arizona, towing a 10,000 pound trailer, it was a conventional design. That particular vehicle, over about 200 miles of different journalists driving it around, was averaging about 6 miles per gallon. Obviously, these are very towing-focused vehicles, and the penalty for that towing ability is going to be fuel economy. There's no real way around it. All of the entries in this segment are going to have pretty low fuel economy, especially when towing. That's just due to the overall size and weight of the vehicle. One thing I can safely say after having driven this particular vehicle for 530 miles and the diesel model for about 200 back there at the event is that both versions are very, very quiet, whether we're talking about the F250, 350, or 450. Now, one thing I was really surprised by is that the diesel is the quieter version. The diesel is surprisingly refined. It's very smooth, very, very quiet, even when you have the throttle absolutely pushed down to the floor, towing some of those heavier loads up hills. The only real noise you'll hear is the engine fan clutch kicking in and out, because the engine fan is pretty loud when it's at its absolute full lock with that particular system. Now, we don't have an electric engine fan in the 6.7 liter turbo diesel model. It's an engine driven fan, but it is clutch actuated. So when the clutch is completely locked up, it needs the maximum cooling. It does get pretty loud. But other than that, the diesel is actually a little bit quieter than this 7.3 liter V8. Back in Arizona, I was able to spend half of my time there towing trailers. We're towing fifth wheels, conventional trailers, gooseneck trailers, etc. So definitely towed a lot with the F250 and F350, and it really does a great job of towing thanks to the 10-speed and, of course, the various engines that are on offer. One thing that I really hope Ford improves on in the future is the integration of their camera systems and other towing accessories with their infotainment system. I think GM really beats Ford in that particular area at the moment. We do have a 360-degree camera system over here in the center of the dash, but if I press that button, it just says this feature can't be used while in motion. Now, that's a bummer because this Ford system does allow you to get a camera input from a trailer in the rear like the GM trucks do, but it doesn't allow you to display that on the screen while you're in motion, just when you're at lower speeds backing that trailer up. We do, however, have this trailer backup assist device, which we've seen in Ford pickup trucks for some time, and now it's going to work with gooseneck and fifth wheel trailers as well. In previous versions of this system, you couldn't use this little knobby to turn the trailer around if you had a fifth wheel or a gooseneck. It would provide some additional guidance for you, but it wouldn't just back the trailer up. And in this truck, you can let go of the steering wheel, use that knob to steer the trailer. It's a little bit more intuitive if you're not really that savvy with trailer backups. However, on the flip side, I would say if you're buying a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck for the towing ability, then you really should be good at backing up a trailer before you consider driving one of those big trailers around. Backing up a trailer can be a little bit unintuitive at first, but if you're really going to be towing around a big heavy fifth wheel, that's certainly something that you're going to need to learn how to do. Now, the one feature I have to say that I do like with that system, and the one reason that I might even buy it myself if I were buying one of these trucks, is that it does allow you to back your trailer up in a perfect straight line without interacting with the steering wheel. And that can be a little bit handy. It resolves some of that just drama of making sure that trailer is going exactly straight in a line. But if I'm going to turn my trailer, I really want to do that myself. I was able to practice that at the Ford event, and using the little knob, I actually found myself getting into more trouble than if I just backed the trailer up myself. I also found that it took just a little bit longer. But as far as sending your trailer back in a straight line, that is a great feature, and I might be willing to pay for that option just for that alone. With that out of the way, we should probably talk about some of the other options that are available. Again, I really love this massaging seat. If you're looking at any of the trims where the massaging seat is an option, I strongly suggest getting this option if you spend more than, say, an hour or two at a time in your truck. I also strongly suggest getting the radar cruise control option. It's going to be great for those longer road journeys, whether you're towing or whether you're not. I do wish that was a standard feature on this truck. We're seeing radar adaptive cruise control standard in a wide variety of new cars for the 2020 model year, but it is not standard in the Super Duty just yet. Another omission that I've always found a little bit odd in modern pickup trucks is that not every truck out there will have an integrated trailer brake controller. I really think that should be standard in every pickup truck that is sold in North America. Unfortunately, Ford is not alone there. Nobody else makes the trailer brake controller standard, so it's not unusual that it's not in the Super Duty. I just wish that Ford would go to that next level. Another really handy feature I found was this 400-watt AC inverter nestled right there in the dashboard. I was able to charge my iPad and my laptop there very, very easily. It's a convenient location. It seems kind of ugly right there on the dashboard at first, but it is a very practical and handy spot to put it. I did find that a lot more convenient than putting it in the center console or something like that hidden out of the way. The power extending side view mirrors are really a great feature because if you're doing a lot of towing, then you probably know looking around your trailer is tricky in some of the other alternatives in this segment, and the power extending functionality is definitely a lot easier than some of the flip and fold down mirrors that we see in other alternatives. Now, on the downside, the blind spot monitor section of these side view mirrors is not power adjustable, so just the upper side of the mirror is adjustable, the lower side is not, and unfortunately because of that, that lower section does seem to get knocked around a little bit by passengers that are moving around the vehicle, etc. I do wish that that was added functionality to this. They are power folding, however, which is a nice touch because this truck is pretty wide. Before we move on, we should talk a little bit more about the active safety features. We do again have the radar adaptive cruise control in this model, autonomous braking, collision warning. We also have lane keeping assistance, but the lane keeping assistance is not terribly aggressive. Now, for a tow vehicle, I think that's just about perfect, because in other vehicles out there with really aggressive lane keeping systems, it can actually induce trailer sway if you're bouncing a little bit off the line, if you're cutting something a little bit close, as you may need to do in a trailer. It can actually induce trailer sway, so I end up turning it off in a lot of those other options. In this vehicle, it's just a very gentle nudge, so it's not really too much of a problem to keep it on, and then we still get that lane warning feature if that's something that you're interested in. Now, on the downside, Ford does put their radar module in the front of the truck, so if you're going to do any modifications to the front bumper of your Super Duty, you need to keep that in mind. In the Ram pickup truck line, these are really the only ones that are doing this other than Volvo. They're putting the radar sensor right here behind the windshield, and that means that if you modify the front of the vehicle, the radar sensor is still going to work. So definitely keep that particular thing in mind. After 12 hours and 780 miles, I finally have the Super Duty back home in my driveway, and I can safely say that the highlight of my time with this so far has been that driver's seat. It really does making driving long distances in a heavy-duty pickup truck an awful lot more comfortable. Now, why would you want to get the Super Duty? Why would you want to get something like a Sierra or a Silverado or a Ram pickup truck in this segment? What are the pros and cons of each of these? Let's dive into a little bit of that now, and then of course we'll have a complete video on that a little bit later. The key reasons for getting the Super Duty over the competition would be the overall payload and towing ability. Now, this particular model comes in according to this very long list of specifications here that Ford has given me. This comes in right at 15,000 pounds of towing ability conventional, 19,100 pounds of towing fifth wheel or gooseneck. Because there are so many different ways you can configure your Super Duty truck, F250, F350, and F450, this booklet with very tiny print over the span of 8 pages gives me the payload and towing capacity chart for all the various ways you can configure your particular Super Duty. This particular model, as we've been driving it, has a payload rating of just a hair under 3,000 pounds, 2,995 pounds. That's due to the equipment that we have on this particular model and the fact that we have the gasoline engine. If you got the diesel engine, then your payload capacity would be a little bit lower. As with every other heavy-duty pickup truck in America, that is important to keep in mind. Max payload will happen in the gasoline models, max towing will happen in the diesel models. The diesel one is the one that's going to give us the over 1,000 pound-feet of torque, 1,050 for the 6.7-liter engine, but because it is so much heavier, that reduces your overall payload ability. Now, a key reason to get the Super Duty lineup over the competition would definitely be the overall payload and towing ability. The Silverado, the Sierra, the Ram pickup truck line, and the Super Duty lineup, they're really not that far off in terms of overall payload and towing ability one to the other. We have some pretty insane numbers in the Ram pickup lineup, definitely insane numbers in GM's trucks, and of course, range-topping numbers now here in the Super Duty. This beats everybody else by about 2,000 pounds. But again, that's only going to be in a very specific trim that not too many people are going to be shopping for. But on the other hand, you will find, on average, higher payload and towing figures in comparably equipped F250, F350, and of course F450 models. At this point in time, we do have to have my typical disclaimer that if you're towing over 10,000 pounds conventional, 15,000 pounds fifth wheel, or in many states in the US, a combined weight, and that would be GVWR of your truck and GVWR of your trailer, of 26,000 pounds, then you will need a commercial driver's license. And that's why I was not able to drive the Super Duty truck with the max trailer that Ford had available at that event. It was a 30,000 pound trailer. Only people with a commercial driver's license were allowed to drive that particular model. Those limits are very important to keep in mind, especially if you live in a state that uses combined weight rating, because the GVWR of the F450 can get up to a whopping 16,000 pounds. And that would mean if you live in one of those states that use a gross combined weight rating, then 12,000 pounds is all you could tow without a commercial driver's license in that particular model. So definitely keep all that in mind. Now, aside from that, I have to say, if I were shopping in the heavy-duty truck segment, 3/4 ton or 1 ton, my top picks would be the Super Duty or the GMC pickup truck lineup. I do think that the Ram trucks just fall a little bit behind in some areas. There are definitely reasons to get them still. The Cummins turbo diesel engine is legendary in its reliability, as is the 6-speed Ison unit, but it's not going to drive with the polished drive nature that we find in the Super Duty with the new 10-speed. We also don't have tow ratings that are quite as high. Now, on the other hand, we do have the air suspension in the Ram truck, which I really like, and the interior is easily, hands down, the best in this segment. Unfortunately, Ram did not upgrade the seats in the 2500 and 3500 for this design. They've kept the same cab and the same bed from the previous generation truck, same seat design as well. And that means that these seats are going to be significantly more comfortable on long journeys. Where GM's pickup trucks really excel is in their trailering functionality, the infotainment system that allows you to see that rear camera display as you're driving down the road, their invisible trailer functionality, the app integration that we get that allows you to turn on the heater, the water heater, etc. inside your trailer right there from the infotainment system. That is all really, really well done. The GMC Sierra's practical multi-pro tailgate is also a big selling point for me. It has that multi-stage flip and fold tailgate that acts as a step, acts as a way for you to get a little bit closer to your cargo, etc. We do have the man step here in the Ford truck lineup. I think it's a little bit better integrated than the step arrangement that we see in the multi-pro tailgate, but this step is an awful lot smaller. It's not going to be as easy for you to use for people that have a balance problem or anything like that, but it does package up very nicely right there into the tailgate. I also think the GMC Sierra is the most attractive entry in this segment at the moment. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. I do think the Chevy Silverado unfortunately wins the award to be the least attractive in this segment, so things are really split over there with the GM pickup trucks. If you've decided that your towing or payload needs exceed your half-ton truck, there's going to be a Ford Super Duty for you. And depending on your situation, some of these may fit you better than the rest of the trucks that are available in this particular segment. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. Now, the downside would be that the Super Duty may not be the less expensive option for you. The GMC Sierra does appear to be selling at a little bit more of a discount than the 2020 Super Duty, even though it is also new for 2020, and it's a complete redesign, not just a refresh like we see in this model. Be sure and let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below, and let me know what you would pick if you were shopping in this segment for a 3/4 ton truck like this one, or a 1-ton truck like an F350. And remember, if you're shopping for a 3/4 ton truck, only the General Motors trucks or this Ford truck are going to give you about 1,000 pound-feet of torque if you opt for the diesel engine. This one just over 1,000 pound-feet, the GM truck's just under 1,000 pound-feet. That's because in the Ram truck lineup, as I mentioned earlier, the 2500 does not have the same engine output that we find optional in the 3500. Keep that in mind. And let me know all that down there in the comment section below. Also, find us over at facebook.com/AlexNauto so you can see what we're driving this week. Head over to Instagram, all those other social things, and I'll see you next week.